Welcome to Rob Nagy's Rock and Roll Legacy. For more than 4 decades as a freelance music journalist, I had the honor and the privilege of interviewing countless music icons in the world of rock and roll, jazz, R&B, and blues. A priceless journey that began in my late teens. I never imagined I would cross paths with many of my music heroes. Digging deep into my archives, I selected a 1997 interview I conducted with jazz legend Chick Corea, which I hope will be a memorable journey for you, the listener, and preserve his legacy for future generations. Considered to be one of the foremost pianists, composers, and band leaders in the post-John Coltrane era, Corea rose to prominence in the 1970s following his tenure with Miles Davis as one of the founding fathers of the birth of jazz fusion. Forming the band Return to Forever, Corea laid the foundation for his legendary career. To this day, his compositions Spain, 500 Miles High, La Fiesta, Armando's Rumba, and Windows are widely recognized as jazz standards. Throughout his storied career, Corea has collaborated and shared the concert stage with countless music legends, a list that includes Pat Metheny, Stan Getz, Stanley Clarke, and Al Di Meola. His 1968 album, Now He Sings, Now He Sobs, was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1999. Nominated for more than 70 Grammy Awards throughout his career, Corea was the recipient of 27. In 1997, he was awarded an honorary doctorate of music from Berklee College of Music. Corea passed away at the age of 79 on February 9, 2021 in Tampa, Florida. I had the pleasure and the honor of interviewing Chick Corea on 2 occasions. What you are about to hear is an unscripted, never-before-broadcast interview I conducted with Chick in 1997, promoting his album release, Chick Corea and Friends, Remembering Bud Powell. For your listening pleasure, I give you the late Chick Corea.
It was a real trick coordinating everyone's schedule to get these 2.5 weeks of performances, but we pulled it together, and everyone wanted to come back and play some more. Josh was the only one who had worked so hard in this past year, and now he's about to get married, and couldn't quite make this one. So Kenny Garrett, fortunately, is going to do the whole tour with us. And it's going to basically be U.S. U.S. tour. We're gonna go around the major cities, Los Angeles. We're gonna end in New York at the Blue Note for 3 nights. I'm opening my calendar to see if I think we have a Philadelphia date.
Yeah, the 29th, I believe. Yeah, I'm trying to get out to that show. So.
Oh. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the 29th is Philadelphia.
Right.
And Boston, San Francisco, Las Vegas, Minneapolis, Chicago. A quick 12 gigs.
Now, why don't you tell me about the show? I see that you're doing in Philadelphia. You're doing 2 shows in one night. Is that typical? Is that going to be typical for the whole tour?
I think we're going to be doing a lot of those in larger clubs and that kind of an environment, which is kind of nice.
Right.
And yeah, we'll play. Basically, what we do when we have a 2-show night is we just play 2 different shows, just to entertain ourselves, and in case any of the audience stays for the second show, you know.
Right.
Get a different set.
Right. How long is each show? How long is each set that you do?
I don't know. You know, I think it'll vary somewhat, but we usually play about an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half for one set. If on the places where we play just one show, we'll play two halves to the concert of like about an hour apiece.
Right, right. Is that difficult on you guys doing 2 shows in one night like that? I would think that's got to be awfully strenuous on you.
Not really. You get set up and you get it rolling. Actually, sometimes the second set is even smoother because everyone's all oiled up and you know we're rolling along.
That's got to be tough, actually. I would imagine it's got to be tough to even take a break. Once you get really flying, you've got to stop for a little bit and then start up again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on tours like this, the absolutely the easiest and most rewarding and most comforting thing to do is to play on stage, because that's why we've all come out and what we're all doing. The difficult part is all the traveling and the moving around and the changing hotels and the airports and all of that kind of stuff. Once we finally get settled, it's just a lot of fun to play. That's why it's nice to play an occasional club engagement where we stay in the same place for several days.
Now, I just got a copy of your latest release, the Chick Corea and Friends. How is that record doing, and why don't you tell me a little bit about that album?
You mean the Bud Powell record?
Yes, the Bud Powell record, yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, that was, recording was made after after about 6 weeks of touring last summer when the band first got together. So we had performed the music quite a bit before we went into the studio, and just took a couple of days to lay it down. And Bernie Kirsch, my engineer since 1975, who's done, Bernie has done practically every record I've made since '75, and his touch just keeps getting better and better. I think he produced a really good sounding record.
Yeah, it's a fabulous record. Unfortunately, I just received it this morning, but I have tried to give it a listen 3 or 4 times before you had called, so I, had a little knowledge on the record. It's an excellent piece of work.
Thank you.
How is it doing? Is it doing well so far?
Well, I'm told that it's being very well received. It's doing well chart-wise as well, and I couldn't be happier, really.
Now, you recently cut a deal with Concord Jazz, I see. Why don't you give me a little insight into how that all came about and what your expectations and plans are with that arrangement?
Well, Ron Moss is my manager and partner and friend since he joined my group in 1973. So he's basically the one who runs all the music business in all of my scenes. And years ago, we came with this idea of putting a label together. It seems like every time I put a new band together and I come across some young, wonderful players, it's a natural thing to try and help them get their own careers launched and their first records made and all of that. So between Ron and myself and our little staff in Los Angeles, we turned into a pretty good production group for making records and helping musicians put on their rehearsals and tours and that sort of thing, And Ron Moss handles all of that. So GRP, when we were with GRP, Larry Rosen and Dave Grusin gave us the opportunity to put our own label together. They funded the first stretch projects then when we left GRP to find another place to put our whole scene, my approach changed somewhat in that I now want to also record as an artist myself for my own label rather than signing with a big label. So we put the whole stretch package together again and found just the perfect guy at Concord Records, Glenn Barris, to want to have the kind of creative thing that we do. So I think we have a really good beginning to a long relationship now at Concord, and it's just it's a good setting for us to now try and get really good quality records made.
Is there any coincidence in the fact that I know you started out with Maynard Ferguson, who I know and have done some interviews with in the past? Is it a coincidence that you not only your approach towards working with young musicians as Maynard does, but now you're also on the same label as Maynard? Is there any coincidence with that?
It's a coincidence and a happy one.
Yeah.
I really love Maynard.
Yeah. Oh, he's a wonderful man. Wonderful man. You started out with Maynard, correct?
I did. I worked with Maynard's band for about a week or two in the early '60s. I was the replacement pianist for Jackie Byard at the time, and it was a quick hit. Maynard's band was in its glory at that time. Really great band with Slide Hampton and a lot of wonderful players. Joe Farrell was in the band
at
that time, and then that was like I don't know, '63, '64. Then it wasn't until the mid '70s or so that one of my tunes was picked up by one of Maynard's arrangers, and they made a recording of La Fiesta. And I went down to hear Maynard's band play in Boston, and he greeted me as if we were meeting for the first time. You know, oh, Chick, the composer of La Fiesta. You know. Then I reminded Maynard, hey man, you know, I worked in your band for a couple of weeks in the early '60s, and he remembered then, and we had a good laugh. You know?
Yeah, well, he's worked with everybody, so I imagine it's very hard to keep track of them.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. It was just kind of a cool incident. Yeah.
It sounds like, and if I'm reading this correctly from what you've said so far, it sounds like he definitely had an impact on you because, as I said, you seem to have a real interest at this point in helping young musicians. Is that something that you have always felt, or is that something that Maynard was a contributor to, and that you're sort of carrying the torch to the next level and continuing on that sort of tradition with an artist like yourself helping these young musicians?
Well, you know, it was easy for me to get into that because it's a natural exchange. I mean, some of my first band leaders were all incredibly gracious and helpful and encouraging to me. I'm happy to say, Mongo Santa Maria is one of them. He was one of the first band leaders I ever worked with after high school in New York, and he really helped me along. So did Blue Mitchell in the '60s. Had a quintet when he was working with Horace Silver. And he hired me, and I played in his band. Then later on, Stan Getz, and then later on, Sarah Vaughan. And then mostly the couple of years that I spent playing with Miles Davis's group. So I really was encouraged by these great band leaders and great people, including Maynard. But when I started to have my own bands, it was just a natural thing when I found a musician that really had his own music developing and going to help him get it realized, you know, especially in terms of kind of practical things like getting his first recording done, getting some of his first performances done, you know. So it was a natural thing to then just get into having a label where we could put some of this activity on.
You know, Christian is from Philadelphia, I guess. Christian McCoy.
That's right.
He's a great player.
Oh, he's an incredible guy, too.
Yeah, he really is a nice guy. I've had the pleasure of meeting him a couple times. I want to get back to the record, if I could. Obviously, all the tracks are pieces that I'm sure you're extremely proud of and should very well be. Are there any pieces on the record that you particularly enjoy and that you anticipate getting maybe some airplay with or some notoriety with as far as getting, you know, public exposure?
You know, I don't know what, it'll be interesting to see what the record listeners will tend to favor on the record. I don't know. It's too early to tell, I think. But you know, the whole project and the whole repertoire is the favorite of mine now. I like all the pieces. There's a couple of pieces that were that really took an evolutionary course and got more and more altered and changed from the original, which I think turned out really nice. One is he's called Mediocre, which was a trio piece that Bud recorded on Verve years ago. It was put out recently on this Verve set of Bud's. And the other piece is Willow Grove, which is a blues that Josh liked a lot, but that Wallace then took and interpreted in a particular way, which I then made an arrangement to, and turned out to be a nice development of Bud's original idea.
Now, getting back to, you know, some of the people you've mentioned that you perform with over the years, is there anybody that you haven't played with that you'd like to play with?
Oh, gee, there are a lot of guys, especially young guys whose playing I admire. But you know, I'm fortunate. I get a chance to have contact and play with a lot of different musicians. For instance, Danilo Perez is a friend of mine, and I met him recently on a concert he did in Buenos Aires, where he was playing with Gary Burton, my old-time partner. It was a tribute to Astor Piazzolla.
Right.
And Danilo and myself had a chance to jam it at a piano, and now I'm getting a chance to play with Christian and Wallace, Josh and Kenny, which is, I think, an incredible opportunity to me. And Roy, who is one of my favorite all-time musicians, Roy Haynes.
Have you accomplished? I mean, have you been surprised by what you've been able to accomplish in your career, or are you not surprised? What is your reaction to that? You seem to have done it all and continue to do new things. I mean, are you surprised by what you've been able to do?
Well, I try not to. I tend not to view it too much, since since viewing it sort of makes it come to an end in a way. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
I'm completely feel lucky and happy that I've been able to keep on making music all my life and make a good living and make good music and play with great artists. To me, it seems like a rare and blessed opportunity, and I'm very happy about it. I just want to continue to be able to do it.
What are your plans for this year? Once this tour is complete, do you have anything slated for the rest of the year?
Gary Burton and myself have been talking about getting our duet back together for some years now. Occasionally we do a concert together, So now we have a definite plan of making a new duet recording, and we have a slew of concerts we're going to do in the U.S. and Europe and in Japan throughout the year. That actually is one of my major projects this year, along with some performances of the Mozart Piano Concerto that I recorded recently with Bobby McFerrin, and hopefully some more dates at some point with this great quintet.
Have you seen Al Di Meola at all recently? I know Al. Have you worked with him at all recently?
No, but I saw him last summer when he was playing with John and Paco with the trio. We played a gig together in France, in south of France, and he was doing quite well. The trio sounded fabulous. I like their new record a lot.
Oh, yeah. Well, Al's a terrific musician. He really is. And I know he thinks very highly of you because he's mentioned you in some interviews that I've done with him before.
Yeah, he's a really a creative, wonderful player.
Now, one thing he brought up, and I'm going to throw this question at you as well, we had talked about a while back how difficult it is these days for a jazz musician to make a good living and to get exposure and to be able to accomplish or have a chance of accomplishing what someone like yourself has done. And Al sort of attributed it to the timing. He came out at the right time, and you came out at around that same time period. Do you think that's a factor? Do you think it was easier then than it is now?
Well, factors like that can end up being a little bit destructive because there's nothing you can do about them. The only factor that that we should consider is ones that you can do something about.
Right.
When you're born and what area you come up in, and what city you get raised in are like kind of out of our control. Of course, they're factors, but I don't know. This is a real nebulous subject of what are the components of success, and I really think that anyway, one of the ways I think about it and about that whole subject is that I try never to place the blame on the environment or the culture or the world around me or the government or the audience or the record company or the whoever else, you know what I mean? Or that other guy over there.
Right.
Although everything is quite truly a factor, but I think one of the ways to be able to keep going and be successful at something is that whatever the barriers are, you yourself take the initiative to make it happen. However you have to do it to make it happen, So, I mean, it may be true what you say and what you and Al talked about, that it was easier to get exposure and come up in the early 70s and so forth. I mean, certainly in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a lot of great change going on in arts and in music, and there was a lot of challenge and a lot of experimentation. Audiences seem to be embracing new things, and the media wasn't so fixed as yet, so that it did allow through into the public's hands various, a palette of art to choose from. Whereas the media has really gotten into a very tight, fixed thing in the 90s.
Right.
I mean, you have the syndrome of one piece of music getting played over and over and over again on every major TV and radio station in the world.
That's right.
And it makes for the whole idea of variety to get lost, you know. And that's what jazz musicians thrive in.
Exactly.
Variety.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, I mean, we keep on searching for new forms, writing new music, changing new things, and the sound is different. Once the audience has gotten used to one thing we've done, we're doing another thing, you know. And you have to get the listeners involved in the process of creating rather than the sound of the melody that you're making. So it's quite a challenge to keep that kind of a spirit going in a very fixed world. That's what I could say.
Yeah, because I know I get very frustrated because I have great interest in rock and roll, but now that I'm in my early 30s, and as I've gotten older, I've had the opportunity to interview and be exposed to a number of jazz musicians like yourself, and you guys have really become my favorite. I in some respects almost idolize you guys because you just are such tremendous musicians, jazz musician as a whole. And I can't even listen to a rock and roll station anymore. In fact, I listen to RTI in Philadelphia, which is the Temple station. And it's the only thing that I can find that plays anything that I like. And I get it very frustrated, and I don't understand why this music isn't getting more exposure.
Well, every kind of music has its function, and we've evolved or devolved into a society that kind of uses music as a background more and more, and isn't ethnic of the American ethnic is no longer to sit down and really listen to music, go to concerts, go to clubs, be interested in what the artists are doing and what their process is, rather than latching on to the latest tune you can whistle and hum, which there's nothing wrong with that, but if that's the only thing that one does with music, then the creative process starts not to be understood. There is a creative process going on behind all of that, and really that's where all the fun is, you see. All the fun is in the process.
Right, exactly. Who are some of the artists that have been coming out? You had mentioned Christian and Josh. Were there any other artists that you see that have a lot of potential for longevity, and that you have admiration for their work?
Well, the list is long, really. I tend to make friends with pianists because we talk shop, and I've been friends with Billy Childs, for instance, for years, since we both lived in Los Angeles. And in fact, we produced a really wonderful Billy Childs record on Stretch Records, which we're re-releasing now. And he's a great musician, wonderful creative composer and band leader and pianist. Also, Makoto Ozoni is a friend of mine, who's another great pianist who currently has a great trio that he's taking around and working with. And Danilo Perez, like I mentioned. Mulgrew Miller is a very good friend of mine who's a really great piano player, and there's just a bunch of guys that I think are just keeping the tradition really vital and alive. And for sure, the guys that I'm working with in this quintet are creating some beautiful things. Kenny Garrett and Joshua Redman and Wallace's recent recordings are just incredible works of art. Christians also.
I see. I also see that. Are you working with Billy Sheehan with this deal with Concord?
Billy Sheehan is recording on Stretch. Actually, it's a production that Ron Moss is taking under his wing. But I like Billy, and I like Billy's that he's stretching out with this new trio of his with Dennis on drums, Dennis Chambers, John Novello.
Now, didn't Billy played with David Lee Roth? Is that the same Billy Sheehan, the bass player? That's interesting.
Yeah, and
that's quite a contrast.
Yeah, and he's an incredible virtuosic. He's one of the few virtuosic musicians that come out of rock. But now he's exploring the musical ends, the more musical and improvisatory ends of his abilities, and I think it's a wonderful expansion for him. It's very fresh to hear that, to hear him play the music that way.
Yeah, I agree, and it's certainly, in my opinion, I'm like I said, I was never a big fan of David Lee Roth, but I think it's, in my opinion, certainly a better direction for my taste. So.
Well, he's making use of all of his abilities now,
That's
all
right.
of his chops and all of his ideas, which you can really feel the thrust of coming from an artist when he gives you all of it, you know.
Well, it always amazed me, I've been to a lot of sound checks, particularly for a lot of these rock groups over the years, and it was always interesting to me because I was not a drummer, but I was always interested in the drums because I've always felt they're the backbone of the group. And you hear these guys at sound check, and I mean, some of these rock and roll drummers play these incredible jazz licks, and then they go on at 8 o'clock or wherever the show starts, and they play these 2/4 beat rock and roll songs. And it was always just very amazing to me that they just had so much more talent than I was seeing, at their concert. But a lot of the people were never even privy to that.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting. It poses an interesting problem of how I mean, my fun in life is to stretch things. That's why we call it stretch records. I mean,
right.
It's always to push on to the next challenge and try to look into new areas, try to take on new things and do new things. And I think when you perform for people, they can sense that you're challenging yourself, and they pick up on the excitement of that, you know. But like I said, the way we've got our civilization structured, the way the media keeps everything very placid. So the artists tend to pick that up. They think, well, the way to be successful is don't stretch. Play it real straight, and keep it simple, and so forth. And it's only one thought in the infinite number of thoughts that you can create when you're making music.
How do you get away from that, though, Chick? I mean, how do you take that to another direction? How do you get away from that attitude?
You just have to do it and take on the consequences of it. That's all. It's that simple. Like I said, if we start to consider the adversity, you end up sitting down and throwing your hands up in the air and saying, I can't do it. But you don't consider the adversity. The way to do it is don't consider the adversity.
Right. One last question I did want to ask you. Do you get involved, obviously we've touched on you getting involved with helping young musicians and whatnot. Do you get involved in any sort of, with any sort of organizations? Do you do any charity work or any benefit type work? And are there any organizations that are particularly important to you that you get involved with personally or musically?
Well, I've been a Scientologist since 1968. And Scientology as an organization is very active on the public health programs. And I do play benefits and get involved in the programs. Like, for instance, Knockin' On is a program that's very effective in helping people get off of drugs. It has incredible statistics, and there's a lot of active work being done with Knockin' On. There's also another group called Criminon, which goes into prisons to help rehabilitate prisoners. But they have a great success rate at this. There was a recent huge win down in Escondido, Mexico, in a prison down there with some great rehabilitation wins for the prisoners. This kind of thing, this kind of success of the way these organizations work really inspires me, and I try to do benefit things and help them as much as I can.
Well, I think that's very admirable. It's a shame more people don't feel that way, but at least some of us do, I guess. You got to start somewhere. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that about covers it. Is there anything that you'd like to add? I mean, obviously we could continue on and on. Is there anything that you'd like to add before we part?
Just that playing with this quintet is a real dream come true for me, and I'm very happy that the record got got done and is being promoted very nicely by Concord and Stretch. With a lot of thanks to Glenn Barris and Ron Moss for helping all of that happen, because I think the music of the quintet is really good, and I'm having a blast. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody.
I found Chick to be a highly intelligent, straightforward, passionate artist deeply focused on the creative process of writing and performing music, as well as the business side of putting a great band together. I also sensed his commitment and appreciation to his fans and the art of making great jazz records. But I was most impressed by his enthusiasm, dedication, and determination to never give up no matter what comes at you in life. Thank you for taking a walk with me down memory lane. I look forward to our time together next week when I present an interview I conducted in 1996 with jazz legend McCoy Tyner. Until next time, peace, serenity, and blessings.